at the Proctor Plantation. My station is basically kind of a blending station. I'm going to get you. Hi there. Yeah. Lots of fun stuff on that bear skin, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we want to remind people is that for the Powhatan Indians who were here 400 years ago in the English, they're actually having dinners and partying long before the Pilgrims did it with the Indians in Massachusetts. In fact, by 1620, 21, it's almost commonplace to have Indians at your communities working, living, sharing, hunting with you. So it doesn't sound like it's all going that bad, right? So when you think about what the English are going to bring to hunting and what the Powhatans are going to bring to hunting, it's central to what we know as Thanksgiving, because usually if there's a big celebration, they go out and they hunt more, right? So one of the things we all know about the Powhatan Indians is that they are still using bow and arrow technologies, right? The English still use bows and arrows too, but they have other technologies they use. I'll pass these around for you. One is a small game arrow, one is a big game arrow. Let's pass that one around. Small game. All right, that's the one for birds like turkey. You want turkey, you want duck, you want goose. That's the one you want right there. All right, so that is it can be either a beaver tooth or just a shaved down bone. Right.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Obviously for your deer hunting, that's what you're going to use, right? So sharpened stone. So the range on the arrow for the Powhatans is about 40 to 50 yards. So it's just what they need, just enough. But if you are going after your two top animals for hunting as Powhatan warriors, hunters, is going to be deer and bear. And remember, the arrows don't shoot any farther than 40 to 50 yards. So what does that tell you about?
Getting close.
All right. All right. So we all know that for the Powhatans, of course, when it comes to their bows, ours are pretty much geared towards our school groups, our kids, right? So, but we put our real bows together. But when you think about the idea of flight, and of course I touched my first one, I gotta go fix the feather, so that's what it is. All right. So this one, I'll give you an idea, right? If I just pull back just a little bit, just say I'm gonna loft it in the air with it, right? Just flies, right? So we know that bows and arrows fly off the tension of the string of the bow. And from this, the Powhatans, they're all raised to be marksmen. Every Powhatan mother teaches the young how to shoot their arrows. So who are the good shots? The women.
Women.
All right? And the women have to be because they have to protect the crops around the village. All right? So remember the English, what do they know about bows and arrows? And the answer is, if I was to say the word Robin Hood to you, what would you think? You don't know Robin Hood?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so where does that take place?
In the forest of Sherwood.
Yes, right, so it's English. So the English don't need to know about bows and arrows. They're long familiar with bows and arrows. So the thing is, what do the English prefer to hunt with? And it depends what they're hunting. All right. So most English people let their pigs, except for their breeding pigs, wander in their woods. They let them wander, and then when it's time to harvest them, they go out on a boar hunt. So what do you do with this guy? You can well imagine, right? So that's the end of your, right. So you don't want the boars, because every boar and pig back then has tusks. Just like every goat that you're going to see has horns. So when you're out on those hunts, you have to have a hunting pike or a lance, and you have to have a hunting sword, because once you have the boar, you have to be merciful and take it out, so to speak. And that's going to involve your hunting sword. All right? So when you think about the English doing that, pretty commonplace. But the most common way that they're going to start hunting here in Virginia, and what the Indians are going to share with them, are the muskets, right? Most of the Powhatan warriors are really excited to get their hands on these. And so for some of the leaders of the Powhatan hunters and warriors, the English leaders will actually give them firelocks like this to go out and hunt for them. So basically, I'm giving you the technology. The simple deal is you make sure you bring some food back for us. and that's pretty much what occurred. So this musket is pretty standard. It's really good for hunting because it's light. And I'll let you guys pass that around. I know anybody here could probably shoot this. All right, got it? All right. And so here in Virginia, something's going to happen that did not happen in England. A lot of the Virginia women are going to learn how to shoot. Now in England, some women did learn to shoot. I'll give you an example. If you're not familiar, there is King James of England, right? He's the one that charters Virginia. His wife, Anna Denmark, was highly reputed on her shooting. She would go out on hunts with the royals, right? And there was one incident where she was actually mad at her husband, King James. And they're out on a hunt together. Because she was so mad at him, they trap the fox. She gets off of her horse, puts her musket across the saddle, and right in front of King James shoots his favorite hunting dog.
Oh.
That's Queen Anne. All right? So that is a woman scorned, right? So when you think about all these things. But so when you think about how the musket's implemented to shoot, what I'm going to give you is a mark. Usually, remember the range of the bow and arrow for the Powhatans is about 40 to 50 yards. It's about the same for the musket. They don't want to shoot anything farther than that. So if you see that red mark on the tree, that's about from here to there is what we're going to want to shoot at. So if you are in the woods and there's a deer, this is the range you want. So I'll give you, there you go. This is the typical musket ball size for the period. So that's what's flying through the air at the deer.
Wow.
All right. So when you think about all this, and I don't know if you guys have ever studied much about the events at Plymouth, but you know that when Massasoit comes to visit the so-called pilgrims, he brings 90 of his best men with him. The English had already went out on a game hunt. They brought back
John, you got a family of 4 heading your way.
So that's my colonial radio. They had a ton of deer. It's all freshly killed, so they just simply roast it and they eat it. So here in Virginia, it is going to be a case where the Indians will learn how to hunt with the musket. The Indians will teach the English how the techniques work in the forest. And so you're going to have a combined cultural hunt, which is the Indians will start picking up English traits, and the English that are here will pick up native traits on how to hunt better. So it's a cultural exchange. And that's what we're going to see. So now, the reason I'm out here today is to kind of present this, and also I know you have young ones, and part of my demos today is to show you how the matchlock musket fires. But if you don't want to see it, because I know there's young ones, it might be a little loud, we don't have to do it, but if you want to see it, that's what I'm here for. All right?
Pass. I don't want to disturb that baby.
That's right. So
Because he will fall down again.
But so one of the things that we finish with today is Miss Amanda, who's in the Reverend's house in the back. She is going to give you what a full meal would look like with a middling English family. What would a typical middle-class English family here in Virginia, right, with all those English food skills, combining with now native foods in America, and putting that all together, what would it look like on a table here? And I think she's doing that back at the Reverend's house. So if you want to check out our barn, feel free. I know the little Explorer there is on it. But remember that the planters here are mostly tobacco planters, right? So they're not really making food for sustenance. So when it comes to a feast, they have their staple goods here, right? They have their shiploads of flour, rice even, barley, peas coming in from England. But as far as the special foods they want, that will make a feast look good on the table, more than not, they're going to either have to raise it, which you see those guys over in the pen, right? And the most popular feast in England was a boar's head feast. And that's where you serve the pig's head on a platter, right? So, and here in Virginia, the thing is, do you have enough pigs to kind of put that on the table? Well, some people might say, well, that's what we do. Some people might say, well, let's go out and let's get other foods from the woods. Let's eat some raccoon. Let's eat some possum. Let's eat some things. That might not sound like a feast in England now. So usually if you're English, you have to decide whether or not you want to keep your Thanksgiving autumn festival meal as English or you want it uniquely American. That's going to be in their thoughts back then. So Anyway, take your time. My name's John. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you. Ham. In the center I've got apples because my daughter, her favorite thing is something called apple muse.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like an applesauce with a little bit of almond milk and honey and saffron and spices of cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, sugar all mixed together. And so that's what we're putting together for her. And I made yesterday because I don't have it in here. My pompion pie here. The pompion pie is pumpkin pie. And it's a layer of apples, then a layer of pumpkins that have been fried in eggs and herbs, and then another layer of apples, another layer of pumpkins, and then you bake it.
Wow.
It's a little bit different than our pumpkin pie today. That gives you an idea. And I'm about to put up my little Cornish hens here. I didn't catch a turkey this morning, so I'm gonna have to do with hens. So I'm gonna be putting them on my spit here and doing a rotisserie with them today too. And I've got a beef tongue I'm gonna pull out a bit later too. So we're gonna have quite a feast here in Rock Hall today.
How lovely.
Yeah. Hopefully
This
it'll
is so
turn out.
nice.
Is it your first time here?
First time.
Oh.
I moved down here 2 years ago, but I never made it over.
Can't say that anymore.
And so now
Do we care who the Pope is anymore? No, we're Anglican. So we claim this continent for the most part, and the Spanish go, no, 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 it's ours. And then you got countless Native American tribes going, guys, it's going to be a mess. But we claim this area because our king, the source of authority to us, gave it to the company who is sending us over here. Now they're looking for gold. There's no gold. The Spanish were successful with gold further south, so we think we're going to be successful. We're not. Tobacco is what saves us, starting around the 1613, 1614 mark. But until then, we're struggling. 1607, Jamestown is settled or begun, and they start to starve almost immediately to commemorate the fact. They're killed in the dozens by the Powhatans who are not happy to see them there. Go figure, right? They look for gold, they don't find it, they build their fort in a swamp next to the river. Bad idea. By 1609 into 1610, they're eating their own dead for survival. They're surrounded by the Powhatans, they haven't found anything of value, and they're swiftly circling the giant porcelain bowl. Now, the company owns that settlement. It's part of their colony. If it fails, they lose a lot of confidence from the king. The king is standing back watching these things happen. So the company is going to try to tighten things up over here and make things work better by introducing military law. If you've seen the meme floating around the internet that says the punishments will continue until morale improves, that's probably where this comes from. It's a bad idea. You're going to introduce 51 new laws with 35 of which have capital punishment in an attempt to make the colony work better. It's not good. So what they do, the Virginia Company of London, not wanting to lose the colony and tick off the king, hired 300 mercenary musketeers, not the ones in the movies with the swords and the French accents, but heavy-duty G.I. Joe soldiers. These are English soldiers. They have been fighting, again, as mercenaries for the Dutch against the Spanish in the 80 Years' War in the Netherlands. Say that 4 times real fast, right? And in a truce in the 80 Years' War, called the 12 Years' Truce, the Dutch find themselves paying these English mercenaries for garrison duty, so this is a perfect time to get rid of them. So the company, our company, the Virginia Company of London, hires 300 of these guys under their commander, Sir Thomas Dale. He's an English knight, and bring them over here. Their goal is to help Jamestown recover, but then to move on and build a new capital. Jamestown is not meant to be abandoned, and it won't be, but the seat of government is meant to shift from Jamestown to here. This is a better location. This has, we're 40 feet above sea level. Jamestown is at sea level. It's in a swamp. We have a freshwater spring. We're on a narrow peninsula. It's only about, I want to say, like 300 yards wide. It's a perfectly defendable place. That's the idea. What no one knew, lacking a crystal ball and unable to tell the future, is that Jamestown would actually recover. And they will stay the capital down there until 1699. If you had looked at Jamestown in 1610, no one in their right mind would have said, yeah, they'll be fine. I mean, it's a nightmare. They do recover. A large part of that's due to us showing up to help them. So the upshot of this is, while this place was built 14 times larger than Jamestown. My math is faulty, but we're 7 acres, they were ½ acre. I'm pretty sure that's not 14. Its math is way too simple. But we're built huge to be the capital that we never become. Jamestown recovers. They spread out from the fort into Newtown, etc. So then we've got a 7-acre fort up here with the largest Anglican church outside of the British Isles. That's what Henricus is in 1611. Now, our soldiers are put to good use, establishing smaller forts and lands for corn. Well, corn just meant grain in this case. But by 1616, 5 years, you see the soldiers leaving. You see Sir Thomas Dale, the High Marshal of the entire colony, taking a ship home with John Rolfe and Rebecca. At that point, they all leave on the same ship. You never hear those musketeers mentioned ever again after that. For my money, they left because the contract was up. They're mercs. They're paid to fight. Fight's over. Why is it over? Who got married in 1614? You already know. You can't say. What do you guys know? John Rolfe married somebody. There you go. I could be nitpicky and say Rebecca, but you get the idea. When that happened in 1614, everybody stopped fighting. Everybody. The Powhatans put their weapons down. We put our weapons down. For the next 8 years, there's no war. And you're still paying mercenaries. That's expensive. Speaking of mercenaries. So these guys all leave, as far as we know they're gone. So then what happens? Well, that's 1616. They're all gone. We have no military to speak of. We have no soldiers. We have the militia, which is like the National Guard. And God bless the National Guard. But the guys we lost, the musketeers, were like the Green Berets, and these guys are all guys with day jobs we got now. 1616, that same year, no, just said that they left. 1618, 2 years later, Pocahontas' dad, Wissahickok, Chief Powhatan, dies. A new Powhatan leader takes over, Opechancanough. He's much more warlike. We've just had 4 years of peace. We're going to get 4 more. Yay. Everybody has ceased to worry about the Powhatans attacking us, even though the Powhatan nation, we're in their backyard. But we've been getting along great for 8 years, we thought. It's very naive and short-sighted of the English, but you know, it's 400 years ago. What are you going to do? 1622 rolls around, the Powhatans will attack, and they have a very well thought out, very well planned attack that's going to kill about 1/3 of the population of the entire colony of Virginia. And that includes this place. There are only about 30 people living in Henricus at that point, and none of them are soldiers, obviously, because they all left, and this place is going to be burned to the ground. Now, when we were under martial law, starting in 1611, you were required to go to church 15 times a week. It's a lot of church. And that's not a requirement of the Anglican Church, nor is it a requirement of King James, the governor of the Anglican Church. It's a requirement of the Virginia Company of London. They want you in here. Most likely it's roll call, because there's a war going on, in case I haven't mentioned that. So you're in here twice a day and 3 times on Sunday. That all ends in 1619. So for 8 years, martial law, 35 laws with the death penalty. It's a bad time to be here. A lot of executions take place in Virginia. In 1619, the Virginia Company of London gives us in Virginia permission to form the General Assembly, and we will repeal martial law. So you don't have to go to church 15 times a week anymore. Once a week will suffice, but you do have to go. That's the good news. The bad news is we've got 3 years to enjoy that, because in 1622, as I mentioned, the Powhatans will attack in that big uprising that sees the end of 347 English people in about 2 days. This place is burnt down, and it's not going to be built again. That's all really depressing stuff to talk about on Thanksgiving weekend, I know. One of the things that might brighten your day a little bit is we are still a few days away from the first Thanksgiving. On your calendars, you should be marking it. If you've ever heard of Berkeley Plantation, or Berkeley 100 as it was originally known, up the road, they were a colony within the Virginia Company of London. The company sent them over here to establish another colony, what would be called Berkeley 100, kind of within the Virginia colony, and they were under strict instructions that once they landed, their ship landed safely at that site, to hold a service of thanksgiving, and it would be one to thank the Lord for a safe trip and an establishment of a new colony, and it was required to be repeated every year. That's 1619. Now, did we have a lot of food? I don't know, probably not. The one everybody gets up and down about is the one up in Massachusetts, which won't happen until 1621, and is never actually called Thanksgiving. It's a harvest festival, and harvest festivals have been a thing in Western Christian Europe since time out of mind. So saying who had the first Thanksgiving is really kind of pointless. Who had the first thing called a Thanksgiving that was repeated over here, Berkeley in Virginia in 1619. So now you put a little feather in your cap. We beat the North this time, right? Took a while, but there we have it. What kind of questions does all this rambling bring to mind? Absolutely nothing? Come on. You got one.
The religious services, were they morning, evening prayer during the week, and then communion on Sunday, or?
Communion, as of 1604, communion is only required 3 times a year. So how often they did it here?
Required of people, but how many times is the service offered?
Don't know. I think it's every Sunday. I don't know. Again, things aren't written, and things that have been written have been lost. So we're not sure. It's easy to imagine they're trying to mimic whatever they do back home. It's the same church. So whatever goes on back there should go on over here. But there are limitations over here. For example, baptismal font. Do you see one in here? And the 1604 instructions to the Anglican Church from the king, there's supposed to be a stone baptismal font in every Anglican church in England. This is England. We don't know what kind of a baptismal font. Did they bring one? Did they have
one?
What's that?
They have needed one.
Yes, we're trying to convert the locals. Everybody always says, what babies were there? Nothing to do with babies. We're trying to convert the local Native Americans. I have found evidence for wooden ones in the mid-1600s in England. Of course, that's 4 decades later. I have a hard time believing they brought a stone baptismal. They could have. I mean, they brought something like this. This is supposed to be the capital church. And under martial law, the lieutenant governor, the high marshal, and anybody who's anybody would be in here 15 times a week. So it's going to be a little bit fancy. They probably, well, for what it was. There were hopes that the Prince of Wales would come, who were named after Henry Frederick. Of course, he dies very young and never makes it here. Nor would James have let him come, I'm sure. You can't let the only cross the ocean. We get stuck with Charles as a result. But yeah, I think though this place is austere, you would have had a baptismal font. As a matter of fact, I'm building one. Of wood, because I'm not a stonemason. If I ever find someone who wants to give us one of stone, I'll take it. But it's a matter of not knowing what they had, so a lot's been lost. Historical rumor, if you will, which I don't believe, says that the baptismal font at St. John's Church in Richmond is the Henricus baptismal font. I don't know where people got that idea from. I've heard it multiple times. I've never come across anything that says that, but wouldn't it be cool if it was? I'd have to enter into negotiations. But I know that service is required twice a day. It's not just a roll call, which we think is the main reason for the number of times you're here. You will hear a sermon. It's probably coming out of the Anglican Book of Common Prayer. It's already been written. You don't have to come up. I mean, Reverend Whitaker or Reverend Buck at Jamestown, they can write 15 sermons a week, or 14 in this case if they want to. Fine, they maybe did write some, but I think it's easier to use the Book of Common Prayer. It's got a sermon for everything. The new Bible had just come out. The only Bible allowed in the Anglican Church by King James, and it is the King James Version. Not the first Bible in English. It's, I think, the 4th at least. But it's the first Bible in English to be directly translated from the Greek and Hebrew, so people are actually quite excited about that. You'll hear a reading from that in here. When the actual Eucharist takes place, I don't know. It's not going to be, I'm sure it's not at every sermon. I'm not sure, but I don't think it would be at every service. But at least once a week, they're going to offer it probably. But I know church law says you have to do it, I think, depending on your rank in society, I think the average person is supposed to go at least 3 times. You still have to go to church once a week, but you're not allowed to take communion without a pure heart, etc., etc. It's really confusing. I've been reading about it for 15 years, and I'm still not seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, ma'am?
So, kind of came in on the middle of everything, but you had your festivities, your get-together, the food thing, and it was the settlers, and I'm assuming Indians. No Indians at all?
There's 2 different ones going on. 1619 is a prayer, basically a church service of thanksgiving to God for the safe delivery of the new settlers at Berkeley Colony, or now Berkeley Plantation. The other one is the one 2 years and some months later, or no, 2 years later, in New England, in Massachusetts, and that was originally planned for the English, but a lot of they had invited the local Indians to come along too, because the Indians had helped them develop new ways of planting and things like that, and they credited the not the Powhatans, sorry. Who is it? What tribe is it up there? Tisquantum, I can't think of the other. It's a bunch of people you'd have heard of. Something like that. I'm bad with the names, but yeah. So there were Native Americans invited to join along, but the planning had been the English are going to have a harvest festival, and that has been worked over the years into a Thanksgiving, which they're cheek by jowl. Calling a harvest festival of Thanksgiving is not a stretch, but the first one required and documented and goes into the Anglican calendar, liturgical calendar, is the one at Berkeley up the road here.
So did they convert many of the Indians?
To my knowledge, no. Pocahontas or Matoaka, yes. Obviously, she's converted late 1613, early 1614, marries John Rolfe. And the idea was to convert as many as possible. But that's pie in the sky planning. It's really, I mean, later on down the road, of course, a lot of people will convert over time. A lot of Native Americans, their cultures are trying to push back to the side, and they have no choice in some matters, and others they do. But in this period, there's not going to be a lot of conversion yet. We're really still, we're following the directions of the Virginia Company of London, who are a bunch of really wealthy guys back in England calling the shots, and they have no idea what's going on over here. So, you know, look at Jamestown. One of the reasons they landed where they did and built their fort in a swamp is that the Virginia Company of London sent the instructions with them on the ships and said, when you get there, this is where you should build your fort, having never been here. And there's not a lot of literature about, hey, so you're going to Virginia, here's what to expect. No. It would be like me telling you where to park on Washington Boulevard in Hoboken, having never been there and not having a map. So, you know, I'm not opposed.